I've got some exciting rumors for you on 3 Sony cameras. All this comes directly from Sony Alpha Rumors. Now, Sony Alpha Rumors does warn us. They say, caution, don't get too excited about these. These are rumors. These are wild rumors. We haven't validated these. The first camera up for discussion this morning is that much rumored and much anticipated high megapixel camera. And we know that both Sony and Canon have been working on these, and we're expecting cameras coming out for both companies between 100 and 105 megapixels. And this rumor says that the camera is going to have 100 megapixels, going to be capable of 10 frames per second and shoot in 14-bit RAW. They don't mention anything about the sensor, but obviously it's going to be full frame, and I'd be really surprised if it isn't backside illuminated and stacked. But that's it for that camera. Now the next camera we're going to talk about, again, it doesn't have a name, but we do have an awful lot of information on it. It's going to have a 42.4 megapixel sensor. It's going to be full frame, and they say it's going to be backside illuminated, but they don't mention stacked. And usually with Sony, if you're going to get one, you're going to get the other. But again, it's a rumor. We don't know for sure, but 42.4 megapixels is a rather interesting amount. Now, as far as dynamic range, it's going to have 15 plus stops of dynamic range and have an ISO range of up to 204,800. Now, the dynamic range is kind of interesting because in yesterday's video talking about the much discussed Panasonic Lumix S1H Mark II, I said that 13 plus stops of dynamic range really isn't that big of a deal here today. And I think if you're going to be coming out with a camera in $4,000 or north, you're going to be expecting somewhere around 15 stops of dynamic range. 13 does seem a little light. But again, this is a rumor. It is going to have a new image processor as well, and video-wise, this one's going to be capable of 8K video at 24 and 25 frames per second in 10-bit 422. Now, the rumor only says 24, but for this camera to sell in PAL regions, it's going to obviously have to be 25, but it doesn't appear to offer 30 frames per second. What's also interesting is I don't think this is going to be DCI 8K. It's going to be capable of UHD 8K, and the reason for that being is the sensor size, 42.4 megapixels. On a full frame sensor with a 3:2 aspect ratio, you pretty well need 39 megapixels to do UHD 4K. But to do DCI 4K, well, that needs around 45 megapixels. I think it's right around 44.7 to be exact. And that's why the Canon R5 and the Nikon Z9 have 45 megapixels, because they want to be able to do DCI 8K. So this might be a way of crippling the camera a little bit, saying, yeah, we'll give you 8K, but only at 24 and 25 frames per second, and you won't get DCI. But it will offer 8K oversampled 4K, also in 10-bit 422. And I got to tell you, when you want that detail, this would be a very, very useful mode. On the Canon R5, 8K oversampled 4K, especially if you're shooting at a really narrow aperture, produces some incredible, incredible detail. So it's really exciting to see that camera can do this. As we noticed with the R5, what is the overheat going to be like? Are there going to be any record limits? I don't think there are going to be any record limits based on that 30-minute, but depending on if this camera will overheat or not, could come into play. So really curious about that as well. Now, as far as regular 4K, like 4K up to 60 frames per second, it can do 10-bit 422 there as well. And it can do S-Cinetone, S-Log, S-Log3, HLG, and it's going to have about 10 creatives. Along with 10 frames per second, it's going to have the A1 autofocus system. So maybe some slight tweaks and improvements, nothing like the OM1, where it has basically everything but boat autofocus. It has helicopters, motorcycles, planes, high-speed trains, freight trains, all sorts of stuff. This camera also has five-axis IBIS, and I think I missed something out. Yes, it does also do, where is it here? Super 35 at 5.2K. So this looks like a pretty good camera. Based on the specifications, I'd expect it to be somewhere probably in the $3,000 price range. It's doing 8K, but it's not offering all those other modes such as 8K at 60 frames per second. It's not doing 8K at 30 frames per second. It's not doing DCI. And to get over $4,000, I think you really need to offer at least 8K DCI and 30 frames per second. So a truly, truly interesting camera. I'm really curious about this one myself. But again, is this just somebody kind of making stuff up, sending it in to Sony Alpha Rumors to get attention, to get discussion? It could be, right? These are wild rumors. Sony Alpha Rumors has said, take these with a grain of salt, or, go swimming in the ocean and gulp down, because these haven't been validated in any way whatsoever. And now for the next camera. The Sony A9 Mark III, and this camera has been rumored for some time now. We were expecting to get an update earlier in this year and even in late last year, and we got the Alpha 1 instead. The A9 Mark III, I've questioned whether this camera is going to come out because with the Alpha 1 now, it almost seems like it's stuck in a very strange position. But let's go with what the rumors have to say. It's going to have a 24 megapixel stacked sensor. Again, it doesn't say if it's backside illuminated, but I'd be surprised if the A9, if it comes out, the Mark III doesn't have a backside illuminated stacked sensor. While stacked or backside illuminated aren't synonymous with each other, it can happen. You can just have a stacked sensor, you can just have a backside illuminated sensor, but with Sony, I would expect it to be a backside illuminated stacked sensor. As far as shooting mode, 24 megapixels isn't a whole lot, and I get that. A lot of people are complaining. Anytime a camera comes out at around 20 or 24, it's like, oh, can you at least give us 26 or 30? But this camera is capable of shooting burst at 30 frames per second. Doesn't mention whether it's RAW, whether it's lossless, whether it's JPEG. We just have to kind of wonder, or it could even be HEIF. We don't know, right? Also, video-wise, video looks pretty good. It won't do 8K, but it can do 60K, sorry, not 60K, 6K at up to 60 frames per second in 10-bit 422. It can do 6K oversample 4K, and it can do 4K up to 120 frames per second, but that 120 frames per second, or 100 PAL, well, it's cropped, and yeah, it's looking like a really nice camera though. Like, to be able to do 6K oversampled 4K, you're going to get more detail, not as much detail as 8K oversampled 4K. So again, a little bit of a disclosure statement here, or disclaimer statement. Again, I want to thank Sony Alpha Rumors for coming out with this on a Friday. It gives us something to talk about as we enter into the weekend. And for those Sony customers who have been hearing tons about the OM1, tons about the GH6, and a little bit about Canon's R7, well, here we have something to talk about. What do you guys think? Do you think that this is realistic? I certainly think that the first one is pretty much a foregone conclusion. The second one makes sense, but I'm not sure where they're going to price it. There are some potential problems with it, but all the numbers seem to work out. It seems like certainly a plausible camera, at least something that was discussed in a boardroom. And of course, the last one, the A9 Mark III, I'm not really sure if an A9 Mark III makes sense anymore now that we've got the Alpha 1. There's an awful lot of great cameras. We've got that 60 megapixel camera as well, and that stands on itself. And the 100 megapixel camera would most likely replace that. But the A9 Mark III, I just really have problems trying to figure out if there's a market for that. Well, one last thing before I let you go. If you're not aware that I'm giving away Angelbird CF Express cards, go ahead and click off, because I'm not going to give you any more news at this point. I'm just going to talk to you about this giveaway. At the end of the month, I'm giving away either a 512 gig Angelbird AV Pro SX card. Again, it's 512 gigs, 800 megabytes per second. That's the minimum sustained write speed. So Nikon Z9, 8K60, no problem. GH6 with a CF Express card doing 1.9 gigabits per second, no problem. R5, R5C. This is perfect for video. A little slower on stills, as you're not going to be able to hold down the shutter on the Nikon Z9 if you're shooting 20 frames per second lossless. That's where the 160 gig card comes in at 1,480 megabytes per second, essentially 1.5 gigabytes per second, not bits. So really, really fast. So how do you enter? It's actually quite simple. To enter this contest, three things matter. You have to subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's very simple. You click that subscribe button. Next, you have to have a mailing address somewhere on the planet. I don't care if you're in Antarctica, Asia, Europe, North or South America, Africa, anywhere. As long as you have a mailing address, you're eligible. And last but not least, you have to be at least 18 years of age. If you're not, get a parent or guardian to submit for you. And of course, if by law in your region, this contest is deemed illegal for whatever reason, it doesn't follow local laws, then of course it doesn't apply. And I'm sorry, there are some regions where this is just not, there's certain rules and regulations that I have to adhere to. But other than that, I'll be conducting the draw at the end of the month. I'll probably announce it on March the 1st. And then of course for April, or for the entire month of March, I'm going to do it again, because you can see I have 3 of these products. 1 512 gig, 2 160s. So at the end of the month, the person who wins will let me know which one they want. And if they choose the 512, then we just have 2 160s. And I want to say a special thank you to Angelbird. When I did the last review on all their brand new AV Pro Mark II cards, They sent me 4 of these to give away as a contest. So thank you, Angelbird, for supporting the ordinary filmmaker. But that's all I have for now today. I hope you have yourselves a great weekend. Here in Ontario, we have a 3-day-long weekend, which is terrific because on Monday, we get the official GH6 announcement. So I'm going to be covering that. I'll be covering it live. I'm really excited about that. Although if you've been watching my channel lately and subscribing, you'll know that basically I've leaked everything that's going to be GH6. The camera from every angle, we got stills of it. Full specifications been covered on my channel. So subscribe for your chance to win, but also to stay informed on camera news. I cover Sony, Canon, Nikon, Panasonic, basically everybody that puts out an interchangeable lens camera. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.